On October 4th, 2021, there was a second Axie developer chat where Jiho, Psychout, and Zayori TV got together to talk about the most important topic of Axie Infinity, and they talked about Axie Esport, breeding fee, the RONIN exchange, as well as land gameplay, hitting 2 million daily active users, and 4 principles of Axie Infinity. They have also leaked some new cars, which you can see here. Let me know what you guys think of them in the comment section down below. And let's get into breaking this developer chat. Hello and welcome guys, it's Axie, and today we will break down the Axie developer chat. And starting off, we have the daily active users. Now, Axie Infinity has just broken 2 million daily active users. Now, that's some insane numbers. And for comparison, what I wanted to show you is the daily active users that they had just a year ago. So even on October 2020, they had an average of 200,000 monthly users. Right now it's 2 million daily active users, and let's see what Jiho has to say about that.
Of course, we are going to wrap up the stream today with a little bit of a leak coming, so certainly something to stay tuned for all the way through to the end. Jeff, let's start this thing with an update on users. Daily active users, I want to hear about it. I hear that we're close to breaking 2 million.
I was just looking at the numbers. I believe that we have crossed 2 million. It's either way, it's super close. Yeah, it's there. We have 1.5 million Android users, so it's amazing. We're gaining around 100,000 new community members each week, so it's something to keep in mind. You know, as we grow, like the people entering, they might have only been around for 1 week. So
wow, yeah.
Second point that Jiho has mentioned is the 4 principles of SLP and Axie Infinity and how it all works. First of all, SLP can only be created through playing Axie Infinity. So there's no other way to get SLP. There's no treasury for it. There's not like a secret locked up amount of SLP that they can just take out whenever they need to. It is only created through playing. So they need to keep players in the game to create SLP. Now, Axies, the only way Axie can be created is through breeding, and breeding uses that SLP. So Axie is proof that SLP has been created and it has been also burned. What Jiho is getting into with this point is that you need a little bit more SLP in the tank if you want to onboard a lot of new players. And I am assuming that what he means by this is that when they release RONIN Exchange, they expect a lot of new players to get into the game because it's going to be so much easier to get into the game. All you have to do is deposit on the RONIN Exchange, and then you can just start buying Axies rather than on Binance, then Ethereum, then transfer it, MetaMask, all that stuff. So if you want to have a high growth of players in a short amount of time, you need to be able to accompany those players through having enough SLP, and so enough Axies can be created.
I want to kind of iterate or kind of start with 4 kind of core concepts that I think are really important to understanding SLP. So number 1, right? The only way that SLP can be created is through gameplay, right? By playing Axie Infinity. So each SLP is actually the result of time and effort and skill spent in game, right? Number 2, so the only way that an Axie can actually be created is by burning SLP. So each Axie is actually proof that somebody played Axie Infinity for a certain amount of time with a certain amount of skill. So number 3, when there are new players to Axie, right, the only way that they can actually get onboarded is by buying Axies from other players, right? So this means that we actually need to think about future demand for Axies and SLP when actually balancing the SLP economy. And then number 4, right, so long-term sustainability will actually rely on a combination of growth, new sources of demand for Axies, as well as, right, external organizations coming in and subsidizing player. So yeah, these are the 4 principles that I think are really important for all players to understand when it comes to SLP, when it comes to the economy. In terms of like a certain target price, I think, right, like we want this to be a free market, right? So the price of SLP in the long run will be determined, right? It's like kind of derived from, okay, how badly do people want Axies, right? Like, how fast are we growing? These are some of the things that are going to determine the price. We prefer not to like do a target price, but we do, we want to make sure that also the economy is helping and doing well for the people that rely on this game.
Right.
So.
Like I think
Now, I don't think I'm going with those clips in order. If you want to watch the whole developer chapter, there will be a link down in the description. But the next topic that they touched upon is Axie Esport. Now, currently, there's not a way where you can run a tournament on the client that's online. You can only run it on the private client, which you need to get access to. This was made because they had too many active players with the last growth period in, I think it was July. So what they needed to do is take out something out of the game because there was too many active players, and they basically have a private server where you can run Axie tournaments. But in the near future, you will be able to run your own tournaments with however many players you want and however many giveaways and prizes you want to make, even if it's just for fun. So that's coming. That's great news. I really love competing and I love testing myself against other players or just playing with friends, a little in-house tournament, a couple of players that can join in, but that's not available right now, and it should be in the near future.
Since you mentioned esports there, I've been getting this question a lot about the private esports server whitelisting access, and I want to take this opportunity to reiterate that that is not the late game strategy for Axie Esports. The only reason that the esports is on a private access server is because of scaling. We had never intended to turn off the challenge server that makes esports possible. That is going to come back to the main game client, which will open up esports for everyone. You'll be able to run a tournament whenever, however you please. Getting AXS support is a little different, but if you want to do a community event or you've got a sponsor and you want to do your own tournament, in the very near future, that won't require any kind of special access or whitelisting. Once we had to shut some stuff off for server scaling, this was sort of the best option given our limitations, right? I think our choices were no esports until scaling is done, or private esports server that's kind of limited until server scaling is done. So obviously we chose the one that lets us do some esports, but I hear all of you that are really excited about these big opens. A lot of you have been wanting to participate and haven't been able to get into the limited slots for some of these niche events. I hear you. Totally fair criticisms, but you got to bear with us while we get over this scaling hump, and we're making really good progress there. So
next great point that they made during this developer chat is the breeding fee. Now, the breeding fee currently has been reduced from 2 AXS to 1 AXS, and SLP percentage has been increased. But with the AXS price jumping to $150, the same issue occurred. And what they want to do and what they are striving to do is to create, and I believe, an artificial intelligence program that will keep those percentages a little bit more predictable, a little bit more fixed, so they will be auto-adjusted based on some sort of algorithm and prices that they want to keep. So they are working towards that. There's not a deadline, there's not a timeline for this, but it is in the pipeline, and it will be great for breeders when it is finally released, because you have a more predictable cost that you can attach to your breeding process, rather than buying AXS today for $150 and you might not even be profitable with your breeds because it is simply too expensive.
Any thoughts about the breeding formula? I know you mentioned it earlier, but I've seen a lot of recent comments now with AXS mooning so hard. I mean, I think we passed $150 per token today. Potential to alter the breeding formula again? I guess that's something that we're always monitoring and always considering changing if a change needs to be made.
Sure. So right now, the breeding fee is right. It can be very volatile because in an ideal world, the portion or the proportions of the breeding fee would be fixed, right? So there would be, let's say, a certain percentage of Axis tokens would be used for the breeding fee. A certain percentage of SLP tokens would be used for the breeding fee. We don't have that right now. The engineers say that it will take some time to implement, but it is possible in the future, especially I believe with the decks. So we are definitely really excited about making the breeding fee a little bit more predictable for our player base. Right now, it's not like that, and we may have to adjust things as needed. I will also say though that as we mentioned in the article that we put out a couple of weeks ago, we are very bullish on future player growth. We think that we are going to be onboarding millions and millions of players in the coming 24 months. And in order to accommodate these players, we're going to need a lot of axies. So it is okay to have a little bit of a supply glut of SLP, like a little bit of over minting right now, is not necessarily too bad. So, but that said, we're always looking at the economy and seeing if there are ways to balance it and help our players more.
Next couple of clips are regarding Ronin Exchange. Now, G-Host says that Ronin Exchange will be the most important part of Axie Infinity that they have released. What does that mean? It's going to be much easier for people to get into the game. Now, currently there's a lot of friction. What you need to do is create an account with an exchange like Binance, then buy your Ethereum, transfer it to your wallet, and do all of that stuff if you're not able to deposit straight onto Ronin. So what they want to do is reduce that friction so a lot more people can get into the game, and it's much easier to get into the game. That's directly correlated with more active users getting into the game daily, and they need to be accommodated. It's also going to be an exchange that will allow you, I'm assuming, to sell your SLP on the network without paying any fees and transfer that to your Ethereum. So if you are a scholar, you will not have to pay the ridiculous gas fees to turn your SLP that you have earned and then buy your own axies later down the road. So it's going to be a much smoother process to upgrade from a scholar to your first team, and then potentially using that SLP to get your own scholar. So it's very, very important. Hopefully it's going to be released this year. From what they are saying, I'm expecting it to be high up in the pipeline because they are making it seem like it's the most important project, and I'm assuming that's going to be high in the priority list.
Talk about if you have any timelines on the decks. I'm sure people would love those leaks, but maybe just talk about the ins and outs of it a little bit. What's the deck's going to do for like your regular everyday Axie user that's just grinding SLP?
Sure. So the DEX is going to unlock our new phase of growth. It's going to make Axie Infinity and Ronin much more easy to use. Right now, there's a lot of friction around breeding, right? Where if you want to breed, you have to go to a centralized exchange or an exchange on Ethereum and buy, right, SLP tokens and then transfer them over to Ronin, right? This is causing a lot of friction. This is like, right, like last year, right? Like when we had a lot of friction on Ethereum, it slowed down our growth. Ronin, having our own DEX on Ronin will get rid of a lot of friction and make it so that we can grow faster, and it's going to supercharge our economy. That's the basic idea behind the DEX, right? So I'm supercharge and build up a lot more liquidity, right? So this may, for example, make the SLP price more stable. So yeah, it's going to be really important. I think it's going to be one of the most important launches that we ever have as a protocol.
Another important part of the breeding is the AXS fee that you currently have to pay, which is fixed at 1 AXS per breed. And now that currently stands at $140, $150, which is quite expensive. So what Psychout says is that we are not sure if AXS will inevitably be a part of the breeding process, and he says we will have to see about that. So what that's telling me is that they have thought about it and they have it in the back of their mind and they are not sure what to do with it. I'm thinking they're gonna halve it again, or they're gonna take it out completely, because staking has been released, and with staking there's more ways to earn AXS, so you don't really need that AXS from the breeding part of the process. Will it happen? Well, I guess we will have to wait and find out what kind of decision they make.
There are good things and bad things about having too much staked, but in general, I like that there is a lot of AXS tokens staked. But of course, there needs to be some tokens on the market so that there is liquidity so that other people can buy it. And there also needs to be tokens on the market so that people can spend it on breeding, for example. Now, whether or not AXS is going to be a prerequisite to breeding for for the foreseeable future, I guess we'll see about that. But yeah, it's a way to show people that you are a long-term believer. So
the point that every member of the community is waiting for is, will there be new SLP burning mechanics introduced into the game? Now, what they basically say is that there will be some sort of a level up mechanic. I'm not sure if it's with the current battle system or with the new one, but you will be able to level up parts of your Axie. With the SLP burning mechanics, they have seen some really good ideas from the community members, but as I have already mentioned in previous videos, they have to balance a lot of things. Now, they can't just introduce an SLP burning mechanic that will make the burn outperform the mint, because you will have a rise in SLP price, but that's just not sustainable. So what they have to think about is the long-term longevity of SLP, and they want to make it as sustainable and as stable as possible, so there's not that many fluctuations. And if you do take on a scholar, you can tell them, you know, SLP will be between this and that price point, that's where it's stable at, and that's how much money you will make. It's much better for everyone in the community if SLP is stable, rather than introducing a new burn mechanic that will have another spike to like 20-30 cents and then drop back down again and cause some panic. So they have a couple of ideas, they are thinking about them, but they can't just roll them out as they please. They have to think about them a little bit more in depth.
Will there be other ways for me to burn SLP? A lot of suggestions about the ability to like re-roll stats and burn SLP that way. I've had some people suggest like betting on your matches where you could burn SLP. Talk to me about SLP burning mechanics outside of breeding Axies. Is this on the priority list? Are we going to see upgrades? Are we going to see re-rolls? When can I start releasing my Axies into the wild, Jeff? A couple of these rascals are ready to go out on their own, I think.
Sure. So I'll start. I guess I'll start this question. Right. So we've always believed that crafting is going to be a really important part of Axie Infinity. You know, we came from the CryptoKitty community where, right, there was just a huge overpopulation of cats, right? So long term, we know that there have to be a lot of alternative or other demand sinks for Axies, right? So this might be, right, releasing your Axies for crafting ingredients that you then use to upgrade your Axies, right? Your body parts will be able to be upgraded to level 2, level 3, and even maybe level 4. So I think it is really important to create new sources of demand and sinks for Axies, and right, by derivative, right, because each Axie is created with SLP, that would also mean, right, more sinks for SLP. But I think we can also be creative. So yeah, we're not going to promise, but it's also something that we're looking at with the upcoming launch of Axie Infinity Origin, the new gameplay or the new battle system. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think like basically the thing that I will say is that we've been thinking about an Axie crafting and sync mechanism since 2018. We're thinking about it a lot. You know, you can see the early articles from like September of 2018 where, you know, we've written about it. So it's really important, but it can't be rushed, right? I think a lot of people, they're making actually interesting suggestions, I will say. Like they're like, oh, like you could do this to burn SLP, you could do this to burn SLP. A lot of these are actually very interesting suggestions, but they're just not things that can be rolled out very quickly. So yeah.
Lastly, because I don't want to make this video too long, they talked about land gameplay. Now, I currently don't know any land, and I'm thinking many of my viewers don't own any land, but there will be land gameplay, and they had to revisit that from what they have promised in 2019, 2018, and there is 3 core gameplay mechanics on land that they want to introduce. Now I'll let Jihos explain all of that, but the first one, and the one that they are focusing on most on releasing, is basically having a gameplay land possibility to just harvest some resources and then craft with those resources. The very basic gameplay function, but that's what they are focusing on.
Thing that we can say about land, obviously there's always an influx of questions about land. People have been excited about it for so long. The prospects are great. Anything you can share with us at all?
So what I'll share, right, is a little bit of our thought process into land. The land team recently just had a big meeting where we actually just onboarded an amazing new game designer to the land team as well. And so basically the land team just had a discussion, right? So there are 3 kind of buckets of activities or aspects of land, right? So 1, there is this idea of building up a town or a village, building up your individual plot structures, crafting, harvesting resources, right? So that's one aspect of it. And then there's, okay, this idea of like neutral territory, right? So fighting for control of resources, right? This might require social coordination, playing with your friends, playing with a guild, right? For fighting for control of resources. And then there's the third aspect, which is, I think, right, the most aspirational, which is this idea of, right, opening up land, allowing people to build different experiences and mini games on top of their land, right? So these are the three kind of, I think, aspects of land gameplay that we have in mind. I think right now we're focusing on the first, which is just making sure that, okay, people can, harvest resources and craft and build out these beautiful structures, and making sure that experience is really fun and really beautiful and really rewarding for our community. The second and third aspects, right, those are kind of a little bit more off into the future, but they're also things that I think people are really super excited about. So I think that's like a little bit of a glimpse, right? So right now we're just making sure that the first bucket of activities and verbs is really beautiful.
That's pretty much it when it comes to the developer chat, the second developer chat from Axie Infinity on October 4th. They want to make them quarterly, so we will be expecting one in about 3 to 4 months, depending on how things go. If you guys enjoyed this video and you think I saved you some time not going through the 2-hour chat that they had, then let me know in the comment section down below. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for daily Axie Infinity content, and I'll see you in the next one.